Jonah. And most of you probably remember the story of old Jonah. God wanted Jonah as a prophet to go to Nineveh and to preach God's word there. Jonah chose his own way. He didn't want to go God's way. He went his own way. He thought he got it figured out. He headed on a boat in the opposite direction, but ended up getting thrown into the ocean by the crew there when a storm started. Ended up in the belly of the fish, and that's where we catch Jonah at this moment. Jonah is spending 3 days in the belly of the great fish, and he is praying, as I imagine we would do under similar circumstances. He is praying to God, and here's our scripture reading for today from the 2nd chapter of Jonah. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, in my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, into the very heart of the seas, and the currents swirled about me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. I said, I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again toward your temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me in forever. But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayers rose to you, to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will make good. I will say, salvation comes from the Lord. And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto the dry land. May God add his blessing to the reading of his word. Well, I don't know how many of y'all follow the show, but one thing that we certainly can say about this show and about the story of Jonah is it's about people making bad decisions and wrong decisions, and that's something we all do. And we make bad decisions, and sometimes we make them and we think, oh, this is a decision. It's a little bad decision. It's a little sin. It's a little temptation I'm getting into. It's only going to affect me. Other times, we make big mistakes. We get into big temptations, and we know it's going to affect everybody around us. But, usually we lie to ourselves and we say, even a little big temptation is a little one. And it's only going to affect me. No, it's not going to affect anyone else. And that's one of the truths of this story of Jonah. And if any of y'all watch Breaking Bad, one of the themes of Breaking Bad is that you cannot make bad choices without it affecting other people. Well, I've been a fan of this show for years. You might have heard that last week they had their series finale, the final show, and they were having it on Sunday night, and I wasn't able to watch it that night. But that was all right. I was going to watch it Monday night. I had it all downloaded to my computer, and I was going to go home after work and sit down and watch this very final last show. And so I spent the day, it turns out, avoiding people who had watched it the night before and were determined to talk to me about it. And this was strange because for years I've been looking for people who watch this show, and I haven't found very many. And nobody to talk, but all of a sudden here are all these people who want to talk about it. My nephew called, he sends me an email, and he watches the show, and the subject of the email was amazing finale, and so that was easy. I just put that to the side. I was talking to my parents. My 83-year-old father, who'd never seen the show in his life, watched the whole final episode and wanted to talk about it. So I was able to put him on for a day. And then I was out in the parking lot after a stewardship meeting, and I was with our board chair, Linda Dane. And she doesn't watch the show. She's never watched the show. But all of a sudden she says to me, well, I was flipping through the channels last night, and I came upon the weirdest show, and sure enough, that was it. So finally I made it home. I was able to watch that final episode, and I really enjoyed it. Had a good time. But the show Breaking Bad, it's a violent show. There's a lot of violence and a lot of bad decisions. But of course, that's the point of it, right? It's about a fellow who's breaking bad. Jonah was breaking bad. He wasn't following God's lead. He was going off in his own direction. Well, here's a show, too, about a fellow who is breaking bad. He's making bad choices in his life, and he's going his own way instead of doing what God would have him do, doing what he wants to do. And that's one of the big themes of the show. The main character is Walter White. Not Willy Wonka or Woodrow Wilson, but Walter White. And Walter is a high school English teacher. Now, I'm not going to give any spoilers away. I'm sorry, chemistry teacher. Of course, he's a chemistry teacher. No spoilers today. Everything I'm going to say you can learn in the very first episode. He's a high school chemistry teacher. He has a loving family. In the first episode, he's diagnosed with cancer. There is a treatment that could help him, but it may just extend his life a little bit, but it's expensive. And he doesn't have the health care to cover it. And he doesn't have the money. He certainly doesn't have money to give his family leave his family when he dies. And so here is him breaking bad. He makes the choice to manufacture drugs, illegal drugs, and to sell them, namely methamphetamines, and that is him breaking bad, and that's what the whole show is about. All the seasons are about the results of this choice that he makes in his life to break bad. He is a modern-day Jonah. Once again, most of us here know real well the story of Jonah. Jonah had a mission to do, something God wanted from him. And instead of doing what God wanted, he started breaking bad. He started doing what he wanted to do. He started thinking he could outsmart God. And that's really what his story is about. It's about him going his own way and making bad choices, and suddenly those choices are affecting lots and lots of people. Now, this is something that's very interesting about this show, even though it's not one I would recommend to everybody. It is a show that concentrates, and unlike a lot of the TV shows today, shows us there are consequences to our actions. How many of the TV shows, bad things happen or people are killed, and we never see the consequence of that? We never see the people who grieve for that person. We never see the pain that comes from that. Well, this show is all about consequences, and it's also all about the fact that you can't go around doing bad things and not have it affect the people you love. To me, that makes it a pretty worthwhile show. I want to tell you, talk just a little bit more about how it compares to this story of Jonah. Now, both of these guys, Jonah and Walter, both of them are all about their pride. And that's something we need to remember when we're faced with some decision in our lives, particularly when our backs are up against the wall. This is kind of what happens to both these guys. Their backs are up against the wall, they need a way out, they need something, and they take the bad course. They take the bad direction. And one thing that causes them to do that is their pride. How often that gets us in trouble when it has to do with decisions in our life, whether I should do this or whether I shouldn't do it. It is our pride. We think of what we want to do. Jonah wanted to go away from Nineveh. He wanted to go in the opposite direction. Walter wanted this money. He didn't want somebody else to give him the money. He didn't want to receive it from somebody else. He wanted to provide for his family himself. The pride of that made him go down this wrong path. It's something that we can look at and we can see in our own lives. And think about when we're making big decisions that affect us. Is this just me? Is this really best for those around me? Is it really best for my family? Is it really best for my community, for my church, for my friends? Or is it just best for me? Now, everybody else is going to suffer because of this decision that I've made. One thing that God gives us, and always, in situations, it's amazing how God gives us another alternative. Instead of going our own way, instead of following a path that's just good for us, God so often, so regularly gives us another way out where we can, if we can, turn off our pride. We can do and get out of this situation. Of course, Jonah, all he had to do was to turn off his pride and to go to Nineveh. Right? But then first, instead of himself first, he goes, he preaches, God works among these people, and he's back home again. That's all he needs to do. That's his alternative, and he can't take it. Walter White in the show, right away in the show, very quickly, he is offered the money he needs for this treatment that he needs so much. Right away, he's offered that, but he refuses to take it because he wants to do it himself. It's his pride that keeps him on this track. And that's something we need to look at when we're thinking about these decisions we make in life, because I'll tell you, we start making prideful decisions, then right away we're going to start living a lie. Because when we're out for ourselves and we make decisions that are just based on what we want, we don't want to admit that to other people, and we certainly don't want to admit it to ourselves, right? So we start lying to others. We start lying to ourselves. We don't admit why we're really doing it, why we're really into this why we've really made this decision. And so we start telling ourselves all sorts of different lies. We start saying to ourselves that, this is a one-time thing. I'm going to do this, and that's it. Or I deserve this. I live a good life. I'm a nice person. I deserve this one thing. Or, I'm going to do it for a little while. I can stop anytime. All these lies we tell ourselves. These lies that we tell other people. Boy, I'm only going to do it once. That's one of the biggest right there. And we know that, don't we? When we start down make a bad decision, we start in a bad direction, and we think, I'm going to do this one time. And again, that's Walter's plan right at the beginning. Do this one time, get the money, and then that's it. That's never the way it works. When we make a bad choice, when we make a bad decision, there is another one right around the corner. And another lie to cover that up, and another bad decision after that, and a lie to cover that up. And it's a downward spiral until we can't remember all of the bad decisions we've made and all the lies we've made to cover them up. Well, that's one thing to keep in mind. It can help us actually to judge and to look at our lives. How many lies are we telling right now? How many lies are we telling people around us? And aren't they based on some bad decision that we've made? It's a good indication that somewhere in our lives we are breaking bad. We're making some bad decisions. But there's a difference. Finally, and this is the good news. The difference between Walter White and Jonah is Jonah turns his life around, right? Takes a lot. He has to get thrown into the ocean. He has to get swallowed by a fish. He has to spend 3 days there. But finally, in this second chapter of Jonah, we see him making this transition. He had this time to think, right? Nothing much else to do in the belly of a fish, as far as I know. I mean, he has some good thinking time available, and he starts to realize what he has done. He starts to see the lies he has told himself. He starts to see where these decisions that he has made has left him. You hear that verse that said, man, I have descended down to the roots of the mountain, and the earth is all around me, and it's barring me from moving further. He had put himself down there. But then he says, but now I can turn toward God's temple. Not only does he see this lie he's been telling himself, not only does he see where this decisions he made has left him, he's down there, he's in a hopeless situation. I don't know anybody except maybe Lazarus or Jesus Christ who was in a more hopeless situation than Jonah was, in the belly of a fish, at the bottom of the ocean. And he starts talking about hope. He starts praying about God's salvation. And that's one thing I want us all to remember today. If we've made some bad decisions, anywhere in our lives, maybe something in the past, something in the present right now, we need to be mindful of the pride that can lead us to these bad decisions. We need to be aware of the lies that can come from that pride. But we also need to remember that there is always hope. For Jonah, it took a lot for him to realize that he was breaking bad. He had to be in the belly of a fish. He had to spend those days alone. But it doesn't have to be that way for us. We don't have to be ruined. We don't have to wait till the disaster call comes. We don't have to wait till we've been swallowed by the fish. Right now, we can look and we can see what Jonah has said, and we can see with his eyes, and we can say with him, salvation is possible. Even here, even now, even where I have put myself in this world, salvation is possible. And as Jonah says, salvation comes from the Lord. Friends, let's bow in prayer. Loving God, we do ask for you to give us and to be of help to us in this week ahead. Lord, help us to see the many different ways that we are tempted to draw away from you, to pull away from your path, instead of being disciples of your Son, Jesus Christ, to go off and be disciples of our own desires. Lord, give us the strength and the discipline we need to make the good choices that you would have us make so that we can continue on the path as your children. It is in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.